Hello everybody and welcome to another video. And today was a bit of a confusing one. I'm going to be looking at a band that I've not heard of before, but I've kind of heard before, if that makes sense. We're looking at a band today called The Circle. Now, I have heard music by this band once before, but they were under a different name. They went by the name Vagrant. And back in April of 2019, I checked out a song of theirs called Blood on a Crow's Beak, off the album Rise of the Norn that was released that same year. However, as you might have noticed, the name of the band has changed and their vocalist has also changed. They now have Azim Sira from Winter Sun on vocals. I've probably pronounced that name horribly wrong, and I do apologise if I have. So they've got Azim from Winter Sun now on vocals. They've changed the name of the band. I'm not sure if the actual style of music itself has changed, because they describe themselves as epic black/death metal, I believe it was. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I recall I think I enjoyed it. But today we're going to be looking at a track called Chapter 3, Zorn. Now, there is a bit of an explanation as to why it's called Chapter 3. This track comes off an upcoming concept album called Metamorphosis. And here's a brief description here. It says, Metamorphosis is a concept album comprising of 4 tracks with a total playing time of 28 minutes. The concept is based on changes a person is going through and human reactions to setbacks like betrayal, separation, or death. The story shows how humans deal with life's challenges, what feelings they develop, and what phases they live through to get over everything. In order to show how humans grow as individuals under such circumstances, every song represents a separate chapter that reflects a specific phase: fear, despair, wrath, and salvation. Now, this track is called, like I said, Chapter 3, Zorn. Why Zorn? I don't know. But it says Chapter 3, and if we go by the order of the phases that they listed, this should probably be Wrath, or Roth, depending how you want to pronounce it. So we'll see. I've got the lyrics here. So we'll jump into this track and see what we have. So this is Chapter 3, Zorn, by The Circle. Let's have a look. And there we go. Chapter 3, Zorn, by The Circle. Now, this is quite a difficult one for me to call here, because I've mentioned before I have quite a complicated relationship with black metal. You know, there's some that I really like, some that I'm not overly fond of, some that I just really, really don't like at all. And this one's difficult because, you know, some of the music in this track is absolutely astonishing. You know, it's really, really good, very, very well performed, you know. And, you know, it's got that fast, heavy black metal feel about it in certain areas. It's got more beautiful and melodic parts, you know. It's got some really nice riffs going on in there. But some parts of it are just so jarring. Some of the transitions are just so jarring. Like, right towards the end of that track there was that clean vocal verse, and then it just cut straight in with something very fast and very harsh, and the transition between that quiet moment and that really hard, heavy black metal moment was really quite jarring, and it didn't sit very well with me, the way it suddenly sort of just thundered in. You know, there are ways to do it and it sounds good, but the way they came in with that didn't work for me. You know, it was way too jarring. You know, maybe that's what they were actually going for. I mean, having read the lyrics, this does indeed seem to be the wrath part of the album. You know, maybe they were going for that. I'm not sure, but it felt uncomfortable. You know, and there are other parts during the track where that sort of thing happens. You know, it's quite a jarring transition between two different things. So, you know, I'm a little bit iffy on this track, as it were. I mean, that's not to say that it's bad in any way. You know, it was very well performed. The vocals were brilliantly performed. I wasn't expecting those clean vocals, and they're quite different to most clean vocals you hear. You know, just the quality and the actual sound of them and the way they were performed, they sound quite different to a lot of clean vocals that you hear in black metal. So, you know, that was quite interesting. But again, they've used maybe 3 different vocal styles throughout this song. You know, you had the clean vocals that we just mentioned. They had these sort of deeper, sort of growled death growls, and then you had a sort of more high-pitched sort of screams that you associate more with black metal. So, you know, so they've mixed up several vocal styles, and I've mentioned many, many times in the past that that's something I really enjoy, is when people mix vocal styles. Now, the lyrics go: I annihilate the essence of sympathy. Moving on, there's no trace of empathy. To the source of my integrity, I question the vivid conclusion of heresy. The scale is now unbalanced, an awakening of disorder, condemning all the others, an affection for disbelief. Hatred rushing through my veins, accomplishing its secrets of keeping me insane. Now breeding an ultimate wrath I must unleash. My heart is blackened by the flames. At war with myself, I am to be blamed. To all the demons lurking within me, I bring death upon thee. Fragments of my failures scattered across flagrantly, torments in the cries, harrowing screams, tearing me apart and my hollow dreams. Destruction I pursue aimlessly brings salvation that I seek relentlessly. Somehow the darkness overrules my harmony, and somehow there is no escape from this atrocity. As the vanquisher, I have come to terms with this, but alas, now at this altar lies my very fate. So even though the song was close to 7 minutes long, the actual lyrics there are actually fairly short. And that's almost a common theme in black metal. You know, they have these grand musical pieces that, you know, 7, 8, 12 minutes long. And they have a very, very short lyrical content because they have these long sort of instrumental moments throughout the track, which is a good thing. I quite like that. because I've mentioned on this channel before, I'm a big fan of just plain instrumental music. But yeah, this part, like I said, does seem to be talking about wrath. I mean, there seems to be a lot of sort of anger throughout these lyrics, and you know, he even says at one point, now breeding an ultimate wrath that I must unleash. So, you know, there seems to be a lot of anger within this person. You know, maybe it's from a sense of betrayal. I don't know. You know, maybe they're angry at someone because they betrayed them, or maybe they're angry at the world because, you know, the way the world is at the moment, you know, it's disgusting, and, you know, people's behaviour these days just drives you insane. You know, he even says at the very beginning, I annihilate the essence of sympathy. Moving on, there's no trace of empathy. So, you know, he's given up all sense of feeling sorry for anyone. You know, something has made him so angry or jaded that he doesn't care anymore. You know, this just seems to be like a ball of pure rage now. He doesn't care if people are upset. He doesn't care how people feel anymore. He is just that angry. That's what it seems to be saying. So, yeah, I mean, it was, like I said, it was well performed. You know, musically, it was well performed. Vocally, it was well performed, but some of the transitions between the musical segments were a bit too jarring for my liking. But again, like I said, that might be what they were going for, you know, to sort of bring across the like mood swings, or, you know, the sense of anger and frustration that the person in the song is feeling. You know, it might be intentional that way. I don't know. You know, I'd be interested to hear the rest of the album. Like I said, it's a 4-track album called Metamorphosis, which I believe is coming out soon, or it might already have come out very, very recently. I can't remember exactly, but I'll put a link below to where you can either buy or pre-order it, depending on what stage it's in. Yeah, it was fairly decent, but, you know, it didn't sit that comfortably with me, but like I said, it could be the purpose of that song, and I'd have to hear the rest of the album to sort of get an overall idea of what they were trying to do. You know, maybe if all the tracks have that sort of jarring effect in them, then maybe again, you know, they could be saying that could be part of the album. You know, if they're trying to depict things like fear and despair, you know, those things can be quite jarring. But, you know, I don't know. You know, it was a decent track, very well performed, but there were elements to it that didn't sit well with me, basically. And before I keep repeating myself, I'm going to leave that as it is. Now, if there's a track that anybody would like to suggest for me to react to, then please do so by all means. You can drop a comment in the comment section below, or message me on my Facebook or my Instagram, or you could even message me through my Patreon, where you could also help to support this channel, which would, of course, be a massive help to me, since I make nothing from any of the content that I create on this channel. Every piece of content I upload immediately gets demonetized, which is a little bit frustrating, because, you know, whilst I'm all for the artist getting recognition for their work that I am using, you know, I get absolutely nothing for any of the effort that I put into creating this content. You know, even the parts of the video that have nothing to do with the band, you know, they still get all of the proceeds from the whole video. I get absolutely bugger all. I get diddly squat. It's a little bit frustrating, because, you know, I put a lot of time and effort into making these, and, you know, but, you know, that's not the reason why I started doing this, but it would be very helpful, because, you know, I can, you know, change the background, you know, try and upgrade equipment and stuff to make these videos a lot better. But, you know, things are what they are. There's an option in Patreon where you can get your suggestion jumped to the front of the queue, should you so desire it. There is a limit on how frequently you can do that. It's limited to once a month, and that's just to be fair to people who make suggestions through Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And if you do make a suggestion through those means, do know it could take a while for me to get around to your suggestion, since I do get suggested a lot of new tracks every single day, and my list grows faster than I can record the videos. But I do write down every suggestion I get, so it should get done eventually. It just might take me a while, unfortunately. Also, MetalHead Reacts is a proud supporter of the Sophie Lancaster Foundation, a British-based charity whose goal is to put an end to hate crimes, and one of the main facets of that is hate crimes against people of the alternative community, and that's something that I believe in very, very strongly, something I am very passionate about, because it's something that's been going on for decades, but it's also something that's widely ignored. You know, people don't treat it as an issue. People sort of disregard it and sort of cast it aside because, you know, they don't care. And that's something that really needs to change, because every day all around the world, people from the alternative culture are getting brutally attacked just purely because of their taste in music. You know, and we're not just talking about insults being shouted from across the street or getting shoulder rammed as, you know, walking down the road. We're talking about real, brutal, violent crimes where people are getting hospitalised, sometimes with broken limbs and sometimes even more life-threatening injuries. And, you know, this sort of thing, like I said, it's been going on for decades, but nothing ever gets said about it. The last time there was any widespread commentary about this happening was about 14 years ago, when Sophie Lancaster and her boyfriend Rob Maltby were violently and brutally attacked by a group of 5 or 6 people. They were beaten, kicked, punched, knocked to the ground, and had their heads stamped on so violently that they both ended up in comas. Now, Rob Maltby, he did thankfully survive this attack. He was in a coma for around about a week and a half, maybe a bit longer. I can't remember exactly how long, but he did thankfully survive. Sophie Lancaster, on the other hand, she was in a coma for 13 days before she succumbed to her injuries and she died. This young woman was 20 years old and she was beaten to death just because the group of people that attacked them didn't like the music that she listened to or the clothes that she wore. Now, at the time when this happened, this was all over the news, as rightfully it should have been. But, you know, as things do over time, the story sort of faded into the background as more news stories came to the forefront. But since that's happened, since the violent attack and eventual death of Sophie Lancaster, nothing similar has ever been said. Nothing similar has ever been reported since then. But I know for a fact there have been several hundred, if not several thousand, similar attacks in that space in time. But nothing's been said. Just a couple of years ago, there was a young woman in Glasgow, Scotland, who was running a charity gig at a venue, and during the night she had to go back to her home for whatever reason. Her home was a 5-minute walk away from the venue. In the space of time between leaving the venue and getting to her home, she was attacked twice by the same group of people, and again, beaten, punched, kicked, knocked to the ground, and beaten more. Again, one young woman against a group of people. It's always a group of people, because these people are cowards. But she was beaten, kicked, punched, knocked to the ground. She was brutally and violently attacked. Thankfully, a passing taxi driver put an end to this attack. He didn't stop to see if she was okay, he just buggered off. She didn't get any help until she got back to the venue where she was hosting the gig, where her friends were. But, you know, it took her that long to get some help, because no one cares. Right? This wasn't in the news. I live walking distance from Scotland, and I didn't hear anything about this in the newspapers, on the TV, on the internet. I didn't hear anything about this until my friend told me about this, and the only reason he knew about it is because he was friends with the person who had been attacked. Why wasn't this in the news? You know, a lone young woman violently and brutally attacked and beaten by a group of people. Let's just disregard the fact that she was listening to heavy metal. You know, let's disregard the fact that she was a goth or whatever. A lone young woman was violently and brutally attacked by a group of people, and this was not mentioned in the news. Why not? Because she was a metalhead. If that had been any other person, this sort of thing would have been all over the news. There would have been massive outcry about this. But this wasn't in the news. because she was a goth. And that is unacceptable. If that taxi driver hadn't passed when he had, who's to say she wouldn't have ended up in the same situation as Sophie Lancaster? Who's to say that that young woman would not have been beaten to death had that passing taxi driver not put a stop to the attack? Then it would have been in the news. Had she died, it would have been on the news. And that is unacceptable. We shouldn't have to wait for someone to lose their life before something gets said or before something gets done. It's unacceptable. We shouldn't have to wait for someone to die before we sit up and pay attention and do something about these violent crimes. Because if we keep ignoring it, it is only a matter of time before it happens again. And we just can't allow that. You know, and this is what the Sophie Lancaster Foundation is all about. They don't want anybody else to go through what they went through when they had to watch their daughter slowly die over the course of 2 weeks. And Sophie Lancaster isn't the first person to lose their life because they listen to this type of music. This has been going on for longer than I've been alive. And it is still brushed aside and treated as not a big deal. But it is a big deal. This sort of thing has been going on for years. I've been dealing with it for 30-odd years. And I still get it now. You know, I still get people shouting insults at me or, you know, making some sort of comment just because I'm a metalhead. I've been beaten up countless times because I'm a metalhead. Many of my friends, many of my family have been through exactly the same thing because we're metalheads. It's unacceptable. This sort of thing needs to stop. It needs to change. You know, every day we hear about all these other hate crimes like sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, religious hatred, etc. We hear these every single day. Every facet of them, from the most violent and brutal of these attacks where someone is murdered because of the colour of their skin, their sexual orientation or their religious beliefs, down to the most petty and pathetic of these crimes where entitled white women are calling the police because a family of colour are having a picnic in a public space. We hear these things daily. So why aren't we hearing anything about these people that are getting violently and brutally attacked just because of their taste in music? Just because we listen to alternative music and wear alternative fashion doesn't mean we're not entitled to justice. Doesn't mean we're not entitled to, you know, go out and, you know, we shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have to worry when we go out thinking, you know, I might get violently attacked because of my taste in music. We shouldn't have to worry about that sort of thing. You know, everybody is free to be who they want to be. Everybody has the right to be an individual, and nobody has the right to tell you otherwise. And the thing is, this culture of hatred is growing even more at the moment. It's getting beyond ridiculous. You know, racism is running rampant at the moment. You know, this sort of thing should have disappeared decades ago. What purpose, what could you possibly gain from violently and brutally attacking someone because they like something different to you? Or because they have something about them that is different to you? What can you possibly gain from that? Nothing. There is no point to it. It needs to stop. Attacking someone because they like different music isn't going to accomplish anything. They're not going to suddenly change their mind and start listening to Taylor Swift and Cardi B or whatever the rubbish is that people listen to these days. It's not going to happen. There's no point to it. It needs to stop. If you'd like to find out more about the Sophie Lancaster Foundation, there is a link to their website in the description below. You can go over there, find out what they're working on at the moment, find out what their overall goal is, because they can explain it a lot better than I can, and they're not likely to go on a massive rant like I did. And And if you can help them out in any small way, obviously don't feel obligated to do so, but if you can help them out in any small way, whether it be like a small donation through their website or something as simple as one of these Sophie wristbands from their web store, they've got that one as well. They've got a whole bunch of other really cool stuff as well. But, the smallest amount can make the biggest difference. And the sooner we bring more attention to this, the sooner we get more people talking about this, the sooner we can help to stamp out prejudice, hatred, and intolerance everywhere. But I'm going to leave that as it is. Thank you all very, very much for watching. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye. Rushing through my veins, accomplishing secret soul keep